Hello, everyone. I'm Alexandra Magdziarek. I am a programmer. Like Annelie, I work at Lund University in the biodiversity department. But I work on a technical team with Johan Beckman and Mathieu Blanchet. In Annelie's presentation, you were introduced to the different schemes that we have at LU, and you heard about the data. I would like to tell you about the new challenge that we have for the data to be submitted to us, which is a web application called BioCollect. I will tell you why we chose to work on this particular application, what functionality you can expect, and how it can be adapted for other systematic monitoring schemes. People usually make observations in the field for systematic monitoring schemes. They take notes on paper quite often, and at home they type up the observations into Excel spreadsheets. Then they send it via email to administrators of the schemes. Then the administrators check if there is any data missing or any suspicious records, and if everything is fine, then they enter records into a database. BioCollect is meant to cut into parts of this workflow to save the admins from performing some mundane tasks and to further minimize errors with data entry. BioCollect is a tool that allows researchers to set up projects with specified systematic inventory schemes and coordinate the work with staff or volunteers collecting data. The tool was developed in Australia as part of the Atlas of the Living Australia framework. Why we are working on this is because almost 2 years ago, a group of researchers at LU working on systematic monitoring schemes of birds and butterflies asked us to come up with a software solution to enable managing monitoring schemes and storing data. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so we didn't want to build a whole new application. So we researched a few existing options and we decided to go with BioCollect. There are multiple reasons why we decided to further develop this application. As LU had then been part of BioAtlas, which in turn was part of the Living Atlases community, it seemed natural to go for a component within this framework, and BioCollect is within the Living Atlases framework. Later, as we know, BioAtlas was developed into SBDI, and we wanted to be an integral part of this group. And BioCollect is integrated with other SBDI components like the spatial portal, species list, and the central authentication service where users can register. It's also open source, which meant that we could access the code and build on someone else's work, adding new features and improving existing ones. And we didn't have to pay any license fees. We're also through this part of a bigger whole where ideas can be exchanged and work can be freely shared between different organizations, and that hopefully contributes to the sustainability of the project. BioCollect is actively developed by a team at the Australian Research Council, and it's used by many projects in Australia. And we have already proudly contributed to the core code base of BioCollect by providing the internationalization feature and a record validation feature. And lastly, one of the factors for us was also that BioCollect uses modern technology that we wanted to work with. However, BioCollect wasn't an out-of-the-box solution for us for systematic monitoring schemes. It had to be adapted slightly. The projects that operate in Australia didn't have a strict methodology as systematic monitoring projects in Sweden do. For instance, it was used for citizen science projects mostly. So we had to add project administration tools to it so that I will talk about them later in more detail. And we also needed maximum control over the data entered and customized survey forms that enable validation of incoming data. Our schemes are based on repeated visits to complex geographical locations, like Annelie showed you. And these locations include a parent location and segments of points where the observations are conducted. So they are hierarchical. And we needed to develop that feature in the application. We also have predefined sites, which can be booked by volunteers, another admin feature that had to be added. We have two kinds of users for this app, but there are multiple roles that can be assigned. For us, the most important ones are the volunteers who provide the data and the admins who manage volunteers and control the incoming data. I will start with volunteers. The volunteers can create new sites where they want to conduct observations. These sites have to be confirmed by administrators. The volunteers can also display the site later, download the coordinates, or save a map to use a paper map in the field. They can also see which pre-existing sites are available, and they can request booking one or many. On the right, you see one of the main functionalities. The screenshot is really small, so you probably can't read it, but this is the layout of a form for one of the schemes. This is how the volunteers report observations, where they enter species data and some metadata for the event of when the survey was conducted. A lot of what we created in this category of volunteer functionality was meant to offload tasks from the administrators. So, for example, the volunteers can change their contact details themselves, and they submit the data directly into the database, which is then verified by the admins, rather than the admins having to deal with paper surveys or Excel spreadsheets submitted. The other user group is administrators of projects. They can do everything that the volunteers can do, plus they have some enhanced functionality. They can edit and retrieve volunteers' contact details, and they get notifications about the volunteers' activity. They can see an audit of changes to survey forms. They can also create new projects, manage surveys where they determine what kind of species can be entered for the species lists in SBDI. They can also book sites for volunteers, validate both sites and records, and to deal with volunteers who still don't want to register online and use the application, we also have functionality where they can upload data from spreadsheets submitted via email. Through the work that we have already done, extending the tool for systematic monitoring projects, we are hoping that other systematic monitoring schemes can benefit from our work and set up their own instances of the tool. BioCollect was built with the idea that it could be adapted for other projects by creating a page using BioCollect's graphical user interface, like in a content management system, like WordPress, for example, where you don't have to be a programmer to create a new page. However, how things are now, if you would like to set up your own instance, that's the technical work that has to be done. The application has to be deployed and the database has to be deployed on a server. And unfortunately, we can't do that for other projects, but we can provide support and explain the whole procedure. And the code for it is out there and it's for free. And in the screenshots before, you saw pages from Svensk Fågeltaxerings, the bird monitoring schemes branding, but without it can be all adapted to the branding of the project that wants to use the tool. And that's it from me. Thank you for your attention. Again, the technical team that I work on is Johan Beckman, Mathieu Blanchet, and me, Alexandra Magdziarek. You can contact us through this email address, biocollect@biodiversitydata.se. And if you'd like to see the tool, you can also access it through the link, biocollect.biodiversitydata.se. However, you have to register. So if you are a bird watcher, then you can just do it yourself through SBDI. But if you'd just like to test the tools for some other systematic monitoring schemes, please contact us and we can arrange a test account for you so that you can see how it works. Thank you very much.